Hey y'all, what is up and welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, we discuss all things culture and politics, and today this is another episode of Pretty Politics. This is the series on my channel where I talk about something political or cultural that's been on my mind and do my makeup at the same time. I apologize if you hear my cat meowing in the background. There's not much I can do about that. Today's episode of Pretty Politics, I want to go over where I stand on pretty much every issue so that I can have this video as a reference for things in the future, because I just kind of suspect that that is going to be a thing. So before we get into it, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave any thoughts or opinions or video suggestions in the comments down below, and let's get into it. So I haven't done one of these in a long time, and they're kind of hard because I find it kind of hard to do my makeup and talk at the same time, but you know, it is what it is, girl. So before we get into a lot of the hot button political issues, I definitely think we need to start with where I consider myself on the political spectrum, if you will. So I consider myself to be a libertarian. To me, the general definition of a libertarian is pretty simple. I think you can break it down to stay out of my business and I'll stay out of yours. And it actually surprises me that more people don't kind of subscribe to the libertarian mindset, because like, I feel like that's something that we can all kind of agree on, no? Like, basically, I don't want the government or other people telling me what to do and how to live my life, and I'll do the same for them. In my personal opinion, this is America, and we all have the right by our Constitution to believe in whatever we want to believe and live our lives how we choose to live them. But I think in today's times, we are so far off that track. I think that's where a lot of problems that we have in our culture kind of stem from. Libertarians generally don't like much government involvement, so not a fan of government overreach, bureaucrats, over-regulating, overspending. There just really isn't much need for the federal government in our lives. And for people who disagree with that sentiment, most of the time, y'all don't even realize you've just been conditioned to think that way, because that is how this country was founded to begin with. I would definitely say I'm a libertarian that leans a little bit more conservative, because that's just where like a lot of my morals and values lie. But at the end of the day, I really just want you to do you, and I'll do me. Unfortunately, nowadays, with the way things are going, it's very much both sides trying to force the other to, you know, believe in what they believe in. I really do believe that this happens on both sides. This is just the first example to come to my mind, but liberals trying to force everyone to get on board with a lot of the trans stuff and affirming trans people. Well, while it's your right to choose to be a trans person, it's also the rest of our right if we don't want to go along with it. And this is why I think I'm more of a libertarian than a conservative, because at the end of the day, I really don't care what you want to do with your life. You can be trans, you can do all that. I'm just sick of being told that I have to go along with it. But yeah, generally speaking, not a fan of big government or overregulating, constant government involvement in all of our lives. I don't like that. So I think it's the exact opposite of what this country was founded on. Okay, and now that we've established that, no pun intended, let's start getting into some of the popular political and cultural issues and where I stand on them. So firstly, I think we should talk about the economy in general. I 100% wholeheartedly believe in capitalism and the free market. Capitalism is what has made America so strong for so many years. And I actually find it really interesting that this is even honestly like a political issue right now. But let it be known that I am not a communist. I have seen and been in communist countries firsthand. And trust me, y'all, this is not the market system you want to be living over. Okay? I know it seems fun to have big daddy government do everything for you and take care of you and pay for everything, but I promise you, it is not this glamorous lifestyle that you think is gonna be, okay? I mean, we all know that capitalism produces the best ideas and innovations, and of course allows business ownership and entrepreneurship to thrive. That is one of the most important things about capitalism, that anybody can come up with a brilliant idea and actually do something with that idea and maybe even make a life out of it. And to me, that is so exciting, and it is so embedded in the thread of what America is that It makes me really sad that this younger generation hates on capitalism so much and just doesn't get it and doesn't use it to their advantage. I think kind of what it comes down to, though, is capitalism is not for the weak and it is not for the lazy. I think this younger generation has just grown up so entitled and coddled that they view that as a bad thing, when in actuality, it's such a gift. Quite frankly, capitalism equals freedom, and freedom equals America. So with that little math equation, all I'm trying to say is I am a firm believer in capitalism, and it makes me sad that more people don't try to take advantage of the benefits that capitalism can offer. In a capitalistic society, everyone has an equal opportunity to achieve whatever goals that they want and try to strive for successes that you are not able to reach in different market systems like communism or socialism. Now, I think I'd be remiss not to point out that, of course, I do not condone crony capitalism or any of the corruption that goes down in capitalism's name, but at heart, capitalism is the bread and butter and the heartbeat of America. And as a patriot, I stand for capitalism. Now, let's move on to a couple other thoughts and general opinions that I have regarding the economy. Taxes. Honestly, I don't believe in taxes. I fundamentally do not believe in taxes, especially federal taxes. Why is that? Because we all know that the government just takes our hard-earned money and they use it to further their own personal and political agendas, and they never use it for anything that they say they're going to. The feds are just spend happy. I also believe that taxes are fundamentally un-American and unconstitutional. No taxation without representation. And with the money that these politicians actually use on what they say they're going to use it for, here's the thing. I might not agree with what they want to take our taxes for and use. I don't agree with this endless funneling of Ukraine for Joe Biden's personal gain and personal profit. I don't believe in that. Yet I have to pay for it and I have to fund it along with millions of other Americans who feel exactly the same. When it comes down to local government and state taxes, there's lots of states like in California where they will take your tax money and use it to give people free gender affirming care. Well, maybe some of those taxpayers don't agree with gender affirming care, yet they have to fund it. Not to mention, how does that personally benefit half the people who pay for it? Even a lot of government aid programs I don't agree with, which we will get into later, but I have no say in it. Don't get it twisted. I pay my taxes. I have to. I'm a criminal. I pay my taxes, but I do it with a hell of a lot of resentment. You know, I understand paying for things like road construction and infrastructure. Obviously, I'm all on board with that. But what these politicians do is they make these bills, and in these 100 pages of these bills, they stick in other things that they use most of the money on that personally benefit them. And it's wrong. It's theft. In general, I believe taxation is theft. Not to mention, of course, you have billionaires and corrupt politicians and the corrupt elite who get away with paying basically no taxes, but yet if us little peons don't pay taxes, you have an IRS agent up your ass. It's wrong and it's un-American. Things that Biden does, for example, like wanting to get rid of all of the student loan debt. Why is somebody who paid for their college or decided to not go to college and save money now responsible for paying for those who weren't responsible and aren't able to pay their student loan debt? Typical college, university in 2023, it's a bad decision. And it's not the responsibility of the rest of America to pay for other people's bad decisions. That's why generally I do not like the way that liberals spend money, because it's just not fair, you know? Lastly, while we're on the topic of economics, I kind of want to talk about government aid programs. I'm totally on board with helping people, but paying taxes is not the way that I want to help people. Many of you might know my story as an addict, as a criminal, quite frankly, and an addict. And when I was on the streets, I was obviously involved with a lot of different type of people. A lot of the people that I dealt with were stuck in this generational welfare curse. Their families for years had just been living off of these government aid programs because that's just what they saw growing up and that's what they knew what to do. And that's the problem. Obviously, if I'm involved with these people as a drug addict, they're using drugs, right? So a lot of times these welfare programs, they enable bad behavior. And honestly, what it really comes down to is it's a means of control for the government, and it's a way for the government to keep these people down. Government aid in these welfare programs, they are racist because all it does is kill incentive and hold these people back and never allows them to fulfill their full potential in life. And it's disgusting and it's wrong and it's so sad. Obviously, there's people who break out of this system, but for the most part, that's a lot of what it is. And, Democrats not wanting to enforce policies like you have to have a job while you're on government assistance or drug testing. They're doing that because they want to keep these people down. They want to keep these people poor so they can continue to control them. It's wrong and it pisses me off because I have seen it affect people that I know in my personal life that I care about horribly. A much better way to help people in those positions is to give them real opportunities so that they can actually level up in life. Most of these welfare systems and government assistance programs are just there to enable. One thing I've always said is that if we just took all of the jobs that we make prisoners do, and which aren't like all horrible jobs, by the way, and gave them to people who benefit from government aid programs and actually give them a purpose so that they can feel good about the money that they earn and help boost their self-esteem and give them other options and avenues to succeed outside of government aid programs, that would solve a ton of issues. But of course, the government's not going to do that, right? Because then they can't basically get free slave labor out of it. Next point of contention, we're going to talk about racism and white supremacy and critical race theory and all of that. Generally speaking, in my opinion, all this philosophy truly does is convince, young people of color that they're just screwed from the start. So why would they ever try? Why would they have any hope? It's honestly cruel. And it's not even right. Like, they're not even correct. I have always felt that it's not about race. It's about class. And that is a very real discussion. Unfortunately, a lot of people of color happen to be in lower socioeconomic classes. What saddens me is that this whole white supremacy ideology farce has them convinced that they're stuck in the financial situation that they are because of the color of their skin. Not true. Personally, I think that the whole topic of race is just used to continue to divide us even more on issues and to distract us and to get us to fight and separate us instead of coming together and waking up and realizing that it's not about black versus white. It's not about left versus right. It's about us, the people, versus them. The feds and the deep state and the elites and the globalists and all of those that are working and conspiring against us little peons. That's how they see us. So no, I do not believe that white supremacy is the biggest threat to our country and our nation and our democracy. I think that's a crock of BS. In my opinion, the best way to help with people in lower socioeconomic classes is to start with education and teach them real practical life skills throughout their time in the education system. But instead, we are too busy teaching kids in our public school systems and even our universities that there's 100 genders and you can be a girl when you're a boy and you can be a boy when you're a girl. And it's just such nonsense. It's just such nonsense. It's not fair to students. That's not going to help them in the real world. All right, next up on the docket is policing in criminal justice reform. And if you got that joke, you're a real one. So I actually am a huge proponent of criminal justice reform because I have been through the system and I have seen how corrupt and messed up it is firsthand. These justice departments and legal departments are not there to help you. They're there to make your life way harder. If there is one thing in this country that we need desperately, it is prison reform. Prisons and jails should absolutely be an opportunity for rehabilitation and not be, criminal colleges like they are right now. Especially because most of the time the reasons people are in jail are due to some sort of trauma or just not being set up properly for life. Maybe you didn't have good family in your life. Maybe you didn't have a dad. Maybe your mom was an addict. Usually if you're a criminal, it's due to some trauma. A lot of criminals are criminals because they're addicts and they need help. The point being is that the legal system is actually so messed up on every level. I personally don't even know where to begin with fixing it. But I can tell you that it's bureaucratic BS and it needs to change, especially if you want to stop crime. Because here's what happens, right? People catch a case for whatever reason and they become a felon. And once you become a felon and you get stuck in the legal system, you're never getting out. And if you don't have financial resources and connections, good luck. Good luck. And what happens is, because people are so demoralized and they have no other options, because they have all of these charges on their record and, they have to go to court dates, meet with probation officers and things like that, it's very hard for them to move up in the world and get like a real job and reacclimate into normal society. So instead, they recommit crimes. It's really not rocket science, guys. Spending money to reform jails and prisons into places that actually help these people and actually get them reintegrated into society successfully would seriously help reduce the insane crime skyrocketing that we're seeing right now. Now, when it comes to police, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of cops. As I've mentioned like 100 times, I used to be a criminal, so I've had a lot of experiences with the cops, okay? And my general consensus is they're pretty 50-50. Cops are either really just trying to like do their job and do what they think is the right thing, or they're complete assholes who abuse their power. There's really no in between. I can tell you that defunding the police is the absolute worst option you could choose to deal with our current cop situation. Now, here's the thing. When it comes to like police brutality, I can tell you that they don't discriminate. Cops that are assholes to everyone. And those asshole cops, they really don't care if you're black, white, Latino. They're just looking to abuse their power. And it is a real problem in America. And I can tell you though, that defunding the police is not the solution. What is the solution, you ask? Well, cops don't actually know the law. So when a cop decides to pull you over because they think you're suspicious, that is all on pure judgment. So if you are a cop that is someone who abuses power, that's where the issue comes in. My solution to this, which I have said many times, my solution to this is when cops go through their training, there needs to be way more of an emphasis on them learning the law and not just, their physical techniques that they use. One of the main things that a lawyer does is try to prove that the cop did his job poorly. And, that happens a lot because cops don't necessarily arrest you for breaking the law. Because when a cop pulls you over and they just think you're suspicious, a lot of the times, like, you're not even necessarily breaking the law, or the cops break the law to arrest you. And what's so unfair about this is that gets people caught up in the system and it ends up ruining their lives. So I truly believe that if cops knew the laws better and were held more accountable for when they do break the law in an arrest situation, they would not abuse their power so much and people wouldn't be dealing with these legal repercussions to the extent that they do. This would also help reduce crime because of my first point about recommitting. But of course, that will never happen because, because politicians don't actually want to solve the crime problem. They would love for it to keep escalating. Now, on the other hand of things, people who are very obviously, clearly, purposefully committing crimes, and these judges who just let them go without any penalty at all, like a lot of the situations that happen in San Francisco or New York, or even here in Minneapolis, that's not a good solution either. Because when you tell somebody who's criminally minded that they can basically just get away with it, they're going to keep doing it. And that's not cool because that actually hurts people in the community and that is not fair. It's really all about balance and nuance. But in general, I am a huge proponent of criminal justice reform, and we absolutely need to rethink how we are training and policing in America. Next, we're going to talk about gun control. So I fully believe that gun ownership is absolutely an American right. It is in our Constitution, and the constant regulations and push to eliminate gun ownership in America is absolutely insane. The right to own a gun was put into the Constitution for a reason, especially in times of government overreach like you could argue we're experiencing now. Why people can't comprehend this concept, I don't really understand. So obviously the biggest push for gun control and restricting our access to guns comes from the hysteria around mass shootings. But what people don't seem to understand about this is that restricting gun access and making gun ownership illegal is not going to change the mass shooting problem that we have in America. Most guns are obtained illegally. It's just a fact. It is what it is. Whether it's gang violence, mass shootings, school shootings, all of it, most of the time these guns are obtained illegally. I would argue that the media intentionally creates a frenzy around mass shootings and stuff because they are proponents of gun control. Because taking away our guns means the government has full authority basically to control us. They can intimidate us. They can really make us do whatever they want if we don't have a way to fully defend ourselves. Not to mention, there are many times when a random citizen owning a gun has actually saved lives. And it can also be argued that criminals are less likely to commit certain crimes like robberies or assaults in areas where gun ownership is, very common and popular, because they don't know if the other person has a weapon or not, and it actually makes them think twice. Not always, but sometimes. I also have to point out the fact that, mass shootings in America have really only been a thing in like the last 30 years. Why is that? I'm not going to go full conspiracy theorist on that one because I am on YouTube after all. And I think that I don't even necessarily have to get my point across. So if mass shootings have really only become the phenomena that they are in the last 30 years, what else has seen a large uptick in the last 30 years? SSRIs and antidepressants like Prozac, Lexapro, etc. have been massively overprescribed since the 90s. Coincidence? I think not. Now, I'm not suggesting if you're on an SSRI or an antidepressant that you're going to want to, shoot up a school. But a lot of the times when this has happened, these people have been prescribed to antidepressants because these pharmaceuticals don't work the same for everyone. We are way too overprescribed and obsessed with pharmaceuticals in America as it is. Obviously, the pharmaceutical industry is one of the most profitable in the country, and they have their hands in many political ties. So, 2 + 2 kind of equals 4 here. But when it comes down to it, gun ownership is a constitutional right, and that's really where it needs to start and end. Our forefathers put that in there for a reason, and if you step away from the social programming and social conditioning for a second, I don't think it's hard to understand why. Next, gender ideology and the LGBTQ plus whatever cult. So as a libertarian, I generally feel like as an adult, you should have the freedom to make your own decisions and do what you want with your life. So at the end of the day, if you really feel that it is your calling to transition, then that's totally up to you, I genuinely believe that there are people out there who suffer with gender dysphoria. I know there are. I have friends who are, and I have sympathy for that. But it is a small percentage of people, and to deny that there is not some sort of indoctrination happening using the trans and LGBTQ plus etc. philosophy as a means to do so is just being ignorant and naive. But at the end of the day, if you're 18 years or older, it's up to you, man. With that being said, though, I obviously do not think that children should be getting surgeries or taking pharmaceutical drugs to appease this gender dysphoria that I'm not even sure is real most of the time. So my overall stance when it comes to like gender ideology, when it comes to the law, kids should not be able to partake in medical transition. And, adults, that's on them. That's their choice. I can tell you, though, that having gender ideology, taught in schools absolutely needs to go. The fact that I even need to explain myself on this is insane enough. First off, this is not appropriate to talk about for children. When it comes to LGBTQ stuff, this is literally about your sexuality. There's no reason children should be talking about this or thinking about this. Second off, this is not what school is for. Learning about non-binary and girls can be boys and boys can be girls in school is not going to do anything for these kids. That is not going to equip them for any real life scenarios. It's not going to help them be successful. It's not going to help them get a job. It's just ridiculous. It's obvious indoctrination and it has to go. I don't believe in non-binary and having 20,000 pronouns. And in general, I just think that the LGBT community has become a cult and they're taking it too far. And it's at the harm of people who are actually gay and actually trans. It's so unfair. It is so obvious that the elites and the deep state are trying to divide us, and one of the ways to do that is through the gender ideology thing. And unfortunately, people have been so conditioned to think that they need to be oppressed to be valued in the society that clinging on to the LGBT cult is a super easy way to grab some oppression points and feel better about themselves. It's also a cause to fight for in this day and age when all other causes and fights have already been won. But to me, it's really sad because I think people who are actually trans and suffer from gender dysphoria, people who are actually just gay or lesbians, they're going to be the ones who suffer from this in the end. The pendulum is going to swing at some point. The LGBT acceptance rate has gone down severely for the first time in years. And it's because these activists are so pushy. They're so violent. They just take it too far that they're just turning people off from the idea altogether. At the end of the day, you do what you want, but kids need to be removed from this conversation immediately. I have my more kind of extreme opinions on the gender ideology and LGBT cult and indoctrination thing, but I'm going to reserve them for now because I am on YouTube and I just don't know if I can get away with saying how I really feel about it. Kids need to be removed from this conversation with LGBT and gender ideology completely, and adults can just, you can make your own choices. Doesn't mean I agree with them, but that is your forte, and stay out of my business. I'll stay out of yours. See how that works? Next, we're going to address climate change. I believe that climate change is vastly over-exaggerated as a means of control and fear-mongering from the government. I don't think this is too hard to see and understand when, politicians and celebrities and the elite benefit from massive carbon producing things like private jets on a day-to-day basis, and then tell us that, we need to control our carbon production with plastic straws and electric cars and electric stoves. I think it's so easy to actually see through it all that I actually think it's kind of funny that people even really buy into this anymore. I obviously think climate change is real to some extent because it's only natural, but I don't believe that it's this like imminent doom and end to the earth that's going to happen any second. I mean, wasn't the world supposed to end from climate change like 10 years ago? I just don't buy it. I mean, recycle, do all that, but I think it's ridiculous that it's become such a politicized issue and that people are still buying into it. It's an obvious grab for control from those in power. And if they were really so worried about it, then quit taking private jets and driving, gas guzzling $1 million cars. Okay, and lastly, I'm going to touch on abortion. When it comes to abortion, generally speaking, I think that is a decision between you and God, not you and the government. As per usual, the left has taken abortion way too far. There are some things that need to be addressed when it comes to that. Abortion is not something that should be celebrated or considered normal or a form of birth control. It's really important to understand what you're doing and the choice you're actually making when you have an abortion. You are killing a child. You are killing a child. There is no if, and, or buts in between it. That is what you're doing. And while I don't think that the government should necessarily have a say in that, I do think it's really important to understand that is what you're doing when you're having an abortion. I think abortion should always be an absolute last resort. And this whole new thing from the left where you should be able to have an abortion at 9 months and even after birth in some cases is just pure evil. Leave it to the left to just take it that far. You should really know within a month if you need an abortion or not. It shouldn't take you that long. And with 42 different forms of birth control currently on the market, I really don't understand why it has to ever escalate to that point, but I do get that in some cases it does. And at the end of the day, even though I personally believe that abortion is wrong, it is my moral belief that you should not do that, is my religious belief that you should not do that. I don't believe in superimposing my moral beliefs onto everyone else. If you're good with that and you feel okay with that option, that's up for you, but I mean, there has to be some line drawn here. If you could have an abortion at 9 months, then why not just kill a child at 2 years old? It just makes no sense, and there's no reason for it. So generally speaking, those are my thoughts on abortion. Again, I personally believe that it is wrong, but at the end of the day, when it comes to law and governing it, my beliefs are not the same as other people's. So we absolutely have to stop celebrating it and acting like it's a human right and acting like it's normal. It's not. We need to start looking in the mirror in general as Americans in our society and realizing the things that we're doing, the gravity of the things that we're doing, and the consequences that they have. Having an abortion severely messes with a female's mental health, and that's not something that's ever talked about. And in general, as a whole, I feel like our society, we do these grandiose things and we say grandiose things and we don't realize the impact they actually have. Even calling people racist or homophobic, things like that, those words have real meaning. And when you just throw them around so loosely, you devalue their meaning. Things like people who are white are inherently racist is a ridiculous concept. And all it does is water down people who are actually racist, and it solves no problems. So in general, as a society, I really think we need to start considering the gravity of our actions and our choices and the words that we say. All right, y'all, that is it for today's video. Here is the final look. I hope you enjoyed this. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you feel so inclined, and leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Where do you stand on some of these issues, and where do you consider yourself to be on the political spectrum? Be sure to let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you in a new one soon. Peace.